There's a certain kind of stillness that settles in the moments before everything falls apart, like the quiet before a storm. You can feel it in the air, like something heavy is about to happen, but you don't know exactly what it is. That's how I felt the day of my daughter Lily's wedding. I had spent my entire life working to create a better future for her. The long hours at the construction site, the missed family dinners, the sacrifices I made, every part of it was meant to ensure that Lily would have opportunities I never had. I wanted her to have a life where she didn't have to worry about where the next meal would come from, or whether she'd have enough money to pay for her education. I worked hard, not for myself, but for her. I didn't expect much in return, just the satisfaction of seeing her succeed, knowing I had done everything I could to help her get there. It's funny, isn't it, how parents work tirelessly for their children's future, yet sometimes we end up being the last ones to be recognized in the grand picture. That morning, as I put on my best suit for her wedding, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. The house was silent, just the sound of my boots tapping lightly on the floor as I made my way to the truck. I took a deep breath, adjusting my tie as I looked in the rearview mirror. There was something about that moment, the way the sunlight hit the glass, the way the air felt just a little cooler than usual. It felt like the calm before a storm. I drove to the venue, my heart beating a little faster with every mile. I could see Lily in that beautiful dress, the one I had helped pay for, standing in front of everyone, smiling. It was the moment she had dreamed of since she was a little girl, and I had always promised myself that I would be there for her, no matter what. When I walked into the ballroom, it was everything I imagined it would be: elegant, luxurious, beautiful. White orchids filled the room, the chandeliers sparkled above, and the soft hum of conversation surrounded me. The air was thick with perfume, laughter, and the chatter of well-dressed guests. But amidst all that splendor, something felt off. It was a feeling I couldn't quite place, a sense that everything I had worked for was about to slip away. I saw her then, standing near the altar in her wedding gown, surrounded by people I didn't recognize. She was radiant, of course, but there was something in her eyes, something distant. She wasn't the little girl who used to run to me with open arms, asking for a bedtime story. She wasn't the teenager who would sit with me on the porch, talking about her dreams, her hopes. She was someone else now. I stepped forward, smiling, my heart swelling with love for the woman she had become. But before I could take another step, she saw me, and that's when everything changed. "Dad, I'm sorry, but you weren't invited. Please leave," she said, her voice cool, devoid of any warmth. I froze. The words hit me like a physical blow. I tried to understand what had just happened, but it didn't make sense. I stood there, in front of my own daughter, a complete stranger in her eyes. I could feel the gazes of the other guests on me, the whispers behind crystal champagne flutes, the silent judgment. I had given her everything, every dollar I earned, every hour I spent working, every sacrifice I made. It had been for her. I had paid for this wedding, every flower in this room, every piece of crystal on the table, every detail that made this day perfect. I had paid for it. And now, here she was, asking me to leave. My heart broke in an instant. But I didn't argue. I didn't fight back. I simply nodded and turned to leave. The silence in the room felt deafening as I walked away. Every step felt like it was dragging me further from the person I had hoped to see, the daughter I had poured my love and energy into for 28 years. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I walked outside, feeling like the weight of the world was pressing down on me. The parking lot was filled with luxury cars, each one more expensive than anything I could ever afford. My old truck sat in the corner, a solitary reminder of the life I had built, the life I had sacrificed for Lily. I climbed into it, gripping the steering wheel, my knuckles white with the force of it. I could hear the hum of the wedding music in the distance, but it felt so far away now. I like a different life, one I was no longer a part of. I didn't even bother checking my phone when it buzzed. It was from my lawyer, likely about some property dispute. But I wasn't ready to deal with that. Not right now. Instead, I scrolled through my contacts, stopping at a name I hadn't called in months. I stared at the screen for a moment before pressing the number. First National. This is Patricia speaking. How may I assist you, Patricia? This is Tom Clark. Account number 7794512. I need to stop payments on several authorized transactions. I said, my voice steady, though my mind was racing. Of course. Mr. Clark, let me pull up your account. Can you verify your social security number and mother's maiden name? I recited the information without hesitation. My thoughts were clear now. My decision made. This wasn't about revenge. This wasn't about punishment. This was about making Lily understand the consequences of her actions. Thank you, Mr. Clark. I see several large transactions from today. Which ones would you like to stop? She asked. All wedding-related payments. Venu rental. Catering deposit. Floral arrangements. Photography. Music services. Everything. There was a brief silence on the other end. Are you certain? Mr. Clark, these are significant amounts. I'm completely certain, I said, my voice unwavering. There's been a change in circumstances. Over the next hour, I called each vendor personally. One by one, I told them to stop the payments, to retrieve their services, to undo everything I had done for Lily. Each call felt like I was cutting another thread that connected me to the world I had worked so hard to build for her. I was no longer just the man who provided for his daughter. I was the man who was now teaching her a lesson about respect, about responsibility, and about the true value of everything I had done for her. I hung up the phone and sat back, staring out the windshield. The parking lot was silent now, the distant sound of the wedding fading away. Lily's perfect day was falling apart, and I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of justice. She had asked me to leave, and now the world she had built around her was starting to crumble. I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. This was only the beginning. The beginning of her education, the beginning of her understanding of what it truly meant to take responsibility for the life she had been given. As I drove away from the venue, I didn't feel the anger I thought I would. I didn't feel the rage that was so tempting in that moment. Instead, I felt a strange sense of calm. I had done what I needed to do. Now it was her turn to figure out how to fix the mess she had made. I didn't know what would happen next. But I knew one thing for certain. The lesson was far from over. And as I drove through the quiet streets of Canada, with the soft hum of the truck's engine keeping me company, I realized something. This wasn't about revenge. It was about teaching my daughter what she had never learned: the value of sacrifice, the meaning of hard work, and the importance of being truly grateful for everything life gives you. As much as it hurt to admit it, I knew it was a lesson that had to be learned the hard way. It's strange, really, how fast everything can unravel. How one moment of unexpected rejection can send ripples through everything you've worked for. When I left the wedding, I felt like I was stepping out of one world and into another. My old world, the one where I was a father, a provider, A man who had done everything in his power to make sure his daughter was happy was slipping away. And as I drove farther from the venue, the sounds of the celebration growing distant, I began to realize that I wasn't just leaving a wedding behind. I was leaving a part of my life that I didn't know how to get back. The wedding was supposed to be a celebration, a day of joy, a moment that Lily and I could both remember with pride. But instead, it had become something else entirely. I had paid for every detail: the grand venue, the flowers, the catering, the photographers. I had spent years saving up for this day, working extra shifts, cutting back on things I wanted, just to make sure that Lily had everything she needed. The wedding was supposed to be a reflection of my love for her, but instead, I was left outside, feeling like a stranger in my own daughter's life. I knew that the decision I made to stop all the payments, to pull the rug out from under her perfect day, would have consequences. And those consequences were already beginning to unfold. As I drove, I thought about the look on her face when she saw me standing there, the shock in her eyes, the coldness in her voice. It was almost like she didn't even recognize me anymore. The little girl who used to sit on my lap and ask me to read her stories before bed had grown into someone I didn't even recognize. And I had to wonder, where had I gone wrong? The phone buzzed again, interrupting my thoughts. I glanced at the screen. It was from my lawyer. Another update on the property dispute. No doubt, but I ignored it. Right now, there was only one thing on my mind: the wedding, Lily's rejection, and the overwhelming sense that everything I had done for her was somehow meaningless. I wasn't sure what was worse, the pain of her words, or the fact that I had allowed it to happen, that I had let her push me away without even understanding what it would cost her. My truck hummed steadily along the highway, the familiar hum of the engine grounding me, making me feel a little more in control, a little more certain that I had made the right decision. I glanced at the rearview mirror and saw the faint outline of the wedding venue disappearing behind me. It felt like I was driving away from the life I had known and into something new, a new chapter, a new phase in my relationship with Lily, whether I was ready for it or not. But as I thought about the events that had just transpired, I knew that this wasn't just about me. This was about Lily. This was about making her understand what she had lost, and hopefully what she still had the chance to reclaim. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about punishing her for something that, in the grand scheme of things, wasn't even her fault. It was about showing her the consequences of taking things for granted, the consequences of not appreciating the people who love you most. I knew that Lily would try to fix things. She would try to salvage her perfect day. But it would be too late. The vendors would have already pulled out. The flowers would have been returned. The catering halted. And the photographers would no longer be capturing the beautiful moments that had been planned for her big day. She would have to face the reality that the perfect wedding she had envisioned was no longer hers to claim. It wasn't just the wedding that was falling apart. It was everything else. Too, I could already hear the whispers, the gossip, the judgment. People would start talking about the man who ruined his daughter's wedding, the man who took away everything she had worked so hard for. They wouldn't understand why I had done it. They wouldn't know the sacrifices I had made. They wouldn't see the love I had given her. They would only see the result: a wedding ruined, a daughter abandoned, a father who had turned his back on everything he had ever worked for. But I wasn't concerned with what people would think. What mattered now was Lily. What mattered was making sure she understood the true value of everything I had done for her. The money, the wedding, the grand gestures, they were just things. What I wanted her to understand was that love, true love, is not about material things. It's about sacrifice, about doing what's best for someone, even when they don't see it, And sometimes that means letting them face the consequences of their own actions. By the time I arrived home, I was exhausted. My mind was racing, and I couldn't shake the image of Lily's face. I parked the truck and sat there for a few minutes, letting the silence of the evening wash over me. The streetlights flickered in the distance, and I could hear the faint hum of traffic in the background. But all I could think about was the coldness in Lily's voice, the distance between us that had grown so wide, so suddenly. I didn't want to call her. I didn't want to hear her voice, to hear her apologies, to hear her excuses. I didn't want to hear her tell me how sorry she was. I needed her to understand something deeper than that. I needed her to understand the value of what she had lost, and the cost of taking it all for granted. But I knew that wasn't something she would understand right away. It was something that would take time. It would take time for her to realize what had happened. And in that time, she would have to figure out how to fix things, how to put the pieces of her life back together, without the cushion of my financial support, without the certainty that everything would always be provided for her. And I was okay with that. Because sometimes, the best thing you can do for someone you love is to let them fall, to let them experience the consequences of their actions, so they can learn to stand on their own 2 feet. It wasn't about punishing her. It was about giving her the tools she needed to grow, to become the person she was meant to be. As the evening wore on, I felt the weight of the day settle in. I turned on the television, but I couldn't focus on anything. My thoughts kept drifting back to the wedding, to Lily, to the moments that had led up to this point. I wanted to believe that this was just a temporary setback, that things would get better. But I knew better. I knew that this was a turning point, a moment in time that would change everything. And as I sat there, alone in the silence of my home, I realized something. The pain, the disappointment, the anger, it would fade. But the lessons learned, both by me and by Lily, would last a lifetime. And no matter how difficult it was, no matter how painful it was to watch her go through this, I knew that in the end, it would be worth it. She would understand, eventually. But enough about me. What do you think about this story? Do you think I made the right decision? Was I too harsh? Or was it necessary to teach her a lesson? Let me know your thoughts by liking, commenting, and subscribing to the channel. Share your opinions, because I'd love to hear what you think about this difficult decision. And if you're interested in hearing more, stay tuned for the next part of the story. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. As the days passed, the sting of Lily's rejection and the decision I had made to stop the wedding payments lingered, gnawing at me in a way I didn't expect. I thought, somehow, that by making the choice to pull back from her wedding, I would feel relief, or at least some sense of justice. But all I felt was the weight of what had happened, the depth of the rift between us. It wasn't just about a wedding. It was about everything that had led to that moment. And I knew deep down that it wasn't just Lily's actions that had caused this break. It was mine, too. I had spent years building my life around her, around the idea that I was doing everything right, making the right choices for her future. But somewhere along the way, I had lost sight of something crucial. I had made it all about providing for her, about giving her everything I never had, but I hadn't given her what she truly needed most. I hadn't taught her what it meant to stand on her own, to understand the sacrifices others made for her, and to value the things that couldn't be bought with money. I wasn't sure when the shift had started. Maybe it had been gradual, over time, as Lily had grown older, or maybe it had happened all at once. When she started asking for more than I could give, I had always tried to give her everything: tuition, akar, expensive clothes, vacations, and I thought that was enough. But now, after everything that had unfolded, I realized it wasn't. She had taken it all for granted. She had never had to earn anything, never had to work for the things she wanted. And that was where the real problem lay. The hardest part wasn't the wedding or the money. The hardest part was knowing that my daughter didn't respect me anymore. She didn't see me as the man who worked tirelessly for her, the man who sacrificed his comfort for hers. She saw me as a tool to fund her dreams, not as the father who had given her life, love, and everything he could. The phone call I had made to stop the wedding payments, those weren't just transactions for me. They were a wake-up call. I needed Lily to understand that there were consequences to living a life of privilege without recognizing the cost of it. She needed to learn the value of everything I had given her. The vendors, the flowers, to the photographer. They weren't just symbols of the day. They were symbols of the life I had built for her. And I couldn't just let her continue to walk all over it. Over the next few days, I kept to myself, going through the motions of work and daily life. But my mind was elsewhere. I couldn't stop thinking about Lily. I knew she must have been panicking by now, wondering what had happened to the perfect wedding she had imagined. I imagined her, standing in the middle of the ballroom, the pristine white dress rustling as she looked around in confusion. Everything I had worked for was slipping away, and she was finally starting to realize it. I could almost picture the moment when the vendors started pulling out, when the food was no longer being served, when the flowers started disappearing. I wasn't there to see it, but I could imagine it vividly. I could hear the whispers among the guests, the uncertainty in their voices. They wouldn't understand what was happening, not the way I did. They wouldn't understand that this wasn't just about a spoiled wedding day. It was about years of neglecting what really mattered. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Lily. I had been angry at first, furious at the way she had treated me. But the anger had started to fade. What replaced it was a sense of sadness, a deep, aching sorrow that I hadn't been able to give her the tools she needed to truly appreciate what she had. My whole life had been a series of sacrifices for her, but I had never given her the one thing that truly mattered, the ability to understand what it meant to work for something, to earn it, to appreciate it. As the days passed, Lily's calls started coming through. At first, I ignored them. I couldn't bring myself to listen to her apologies, to hear her try to justify what had happened. I knew what she would say, how sorry she was, how much she regretted her words. But those words were meaningless to me now. I didn't need her apology. What I needed was for her to understand why I had made the decision I did. What I needed was for her to feel the weight of her own actions and understand the cost of them. But as much as I told myself I didn't want to hear from her, a part of me couldn't help but feel that tug the pull of a father's love for his daughter. I had spent 28 years raising her, guiding her, loving her. I wasn't ready to just walk away from that, even if it meant giving her the tough love she needed. I wasn't sure what the next steps would look like, but I knew I had to start somewhere. One afternoon, after a particularly long day at work, I picked up my phone and dialed her number. My fingers hesitated for a moment, and I almost put it down. But then I thought about the silence between us, the months of distance that had built up, and I pressed the call button. It rang twice before she picked up. "Dad." Her voice was small, unsure. It was a stark contrast to the confident, almost dismissive tone she had used at the wedding. I've been trying to reach you. Why didn't you answer?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady my own emotions. "I didn't think you'd want to hear from me." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Dad, I know I've messed up. I shouldn't have said what I did. I was just, I don't know, stressed. But you have to understand, this wedding, It was supposed to be perfect. It was supposed to be the start of everything. And now everything is falling apart. I interrupted, my voice calm but firm. That's what happens when you don't recognize the value of what you've been given. Lily, I've worked my whole life to give you everything you've ever wanted. I've sacrificed more than you can ever understand. And this is what happens when you take it for granted. I didn't mean to take it for granted, she said, her voice breaking. I thought everything was supposed to be perfect. I thought I had everything under control. Perfection doesn't come with a price tag. Lily, I said, my voice softening just a little. It comes from understanding what you have, appreciating it, and knowing how hard it is to get there. I've given you everything, but I haven't taught you anything about how to earn it, how to appreciate it, and that's on me. Another silence hung between us. I could hear her breathing, the faint sounds of her trying to compose herself. I'm sorry, Dad, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I know I've taken you for granted, and I know I don't deserve your help right now. But please, I need you. I don't know how to fix this. I know you don't. Lily, I said, my tone softer now. But you have to. You have to learn how to stand on your own 2 feet, without expecting me or anyone else to fix things for you. That's the lesson I should have taught you a long time ago. You can't buy your way out of everything, and you can't live off of other people's sacrifices without understanding the weight of it. I understand now. Dad, she said, a quiet sob in her voice. I'll do better. I promise. I hope so, I said, feeling a lump form in my throat. But you've got to prove it. You have to show me you can stand on your own, without relying on me or anyone else. I'm giving you a chance to fix this. Lily, but you've got to be the one to do it. The conversation ended soon after that, with Lily promising to start taking responsibility for herself. I hung up the phone, the weight of the conversation settling over me. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew that this was a turning point, not just for Lily, but for both of us. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had done something right. It wasn't about the wedding. It wasn't about the money. It was about the lesson about teaching Lily that there is more to life than what can be bought. There's hard work, sacrifice, and the ability to stand up for yourself when everything else falls apart. And I knew, deep down, that she would get there. It might take time, but I was ready to watch her figure it out, because that was the most important thing I could teach her. The days that followed the call with Lily were some of the longest of my life. Every moment felt like an eternity, filled with a mix of relief and worry. I had made my position clear to her, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was no longer enabling her, no longer being the provider she had taken for granted. But what came next? What was going to happen now that the foundation had cracked, and we were both standing on shaky ground? I spent the next week focusing on work, keeping myself busy in the only way I knew how. My job was my escape. When I was on the construction site, surrounded by workers and the noise of machines, I could push aside the doubts and uncertainty that crept into my mind when I was at home. I could avoid the weight of what was happening with Lily, the stillness of our strained relationship. But no matter how much I threw myself into my work, I couldn't escape the nagging feeling that this situation was far from resolved. Lily might have promised to do better, but promises are easy to make. Following through, well, that's a different story entirely. I knew it would take more than just words. She had to prove herself, and I wasn't sure how or when that would happen. Then, one morning, just as I was about to leave for the site, my phone buzzed. I recognized the number immediately. It was Lily. I hadn't heard from her since our last conversation, and part of me had feared that the pressure of reality would drive her back into the life of entitlement she had always known. But this time, when I answered, her voice was different. "Dad, it's me," she said, her voice shakier than usual, but determined. I I've done something. I got a job." I paused, taken aback. "A job?" I repeated, trying to process the news. "What kind of job?" "I'm working at a cafe in town, just part-time, but I'm earning my own money." "I'm starting to understand what you meant. I've been living in a bubble, and I need to face it. I need to learn how to make my own way." I could hear the sincerity in her voice, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. This wasn't just her apologizing again. This was her taking the first step toward real change. "That's good, Lily," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I'm proud of you for taking responsibility. But, you know, this is just the beginning." "Right, I know," she replied. "I just wanted to tell you that I'm trying. I know I've taken everything for granted. But I'm not going to anymore. I'm going to prove to you that I can do this. That I can stand on my own 2 feet. Prove it to yourself first," I said. "I've always believed in you, Lily, but you have to do the work. You have to show me, and more importantly, show yourself that you can make it without depending on anyone else." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, and I could imagine her sitting there, perhaps in her small apartment, thinking about everything I had said to her. I knew it wasn't easy. I knew she was facing a harsh reality, a reality that was a far cry from the privileged life she had once taken for granted. But in that moment, I felt like she had started to see things more clearly. "I'll start small," she said, her voice more steady now. "I know I have a lot to learn, and it's not going to be easy, but I'm ready to try. That's all I can ask for," I replied. "Just keep going, one step at a time. You'll get there, but you have to be patient with yourself." She thanked me before we ended the call, and I sat there for a moment, staring at my phone. It was a small step, but it was a step in the right direction. And for the first time, I felt like Lily was finally beginning to understand what I had been trying to teach her all these years. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about giving her everything she wanted. It was about earning it, about learning to appreciate what it takes to build a life. As the days went by, Lily continued to reach out, each conversation more grounded than the last. She told me about her shifts at the cafe, the people she was meeting, and how she was starting to save her own money. She was still figuring things out, still facing challenges, but there was something different in the way she spoke. Now, something that hadn't been there before. I could hear the sense of responsibility creeping in, even if it was still unfamiliar to her. It wasn't perfect. I knew that, and there were still moments when I wondered if she would slip back into her old ways. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. It wasn't just the fact that Lily had gotten a job. It was the fact that she was taking ownership of her life, taking steps toward becoming the person I knew she could be. A person who understood the value of hard work, sacrifice, and the love that had always been there for her. A few weeks later, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Lily. I opened it cautiously, not sure what to expect. As I read through her words, I found myself surprised by how much had changed in such a short time. The letter wasn't an apology, per se, but it was something deeper, something more meaningful. She thanked me for everything I had done for her, for the sacrifices I had made, and for the tough love I had shown her. And then, She told me something that made my heart swell with pride. I've been working hard at the cafe, and I've saved up enough to pay you back. I know I can't repay you for everything, but I want to start by paying you back for the money you spent on my wedding. It wasn't just your money I was using. It was your love, your time, and your energy, and I want to honor that. I sat back in my chair, the letter still in my hands, and I let the words sink in. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about the wedding. It was about the fact that Lily was starting to understand. She was starting to see the bigger picture. And for the first time, I felt like my daughter was growing up not just in age, but in maturity, responsibility, and gratitude. It was a start, a small start, but a start nonetheless. And as I folded the letter and placed it on the table in front of me, I realized that, despite the pain, despite the distance between us, this was exactly what I had been hoping for all along. Lily wasn't the same person she had been before the wedding. She was different, more grounded, more aware of the world around her, and more connected to the real meaning of family and sacrifice. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy for her. I knew there would be setbacks, struggles, and moments when she would doubt herself. But for the first time, I believed that Lily could handle it. She had taken the first steps toward becoming the person I always hoped she would be, and that was all I could ask for. In the weeks that followed, Lily continued to prove herself. Not just to me, but to herself. She started to take on more responsibilities at the cafe, and she even enrolled in a night class to learn business management. She was still figuring things out, but she was doing it on her own, and that was all I could ask for. I knew that, in time, she would find her way. She would grow, learn, and become the person she was meant to be. And when she did, I would be there, proud of the woman she had become. Because this journey, this difficult journey of love, sacrifice, and growth, wasn't just mine to walk alone. It was hers, too. It's strange, isn't it? How time moves differently when you're on the other side of something. A few months ago, it felt like my entire life, everything I had worked for, had crumbled in an instant. I had watched my daughter's perfect wedding fall apart, and I had been the one to make it happen. There had been moments when I thought I would never recover from it, that the distance between Lily and me was too great to ever bridge. But here we were, months later, and I could feel the slow, steady process of healing. It wasn't fast. It wasn't easy. But it was real. The calls from Lily, the letters, that her decision to work hard at the cafe and pay me back for the wedding. These weren't just gestures of guilt. They were signs that she was starting to understand what had happened, what I had been trying to teach her for all these years. The hardest part of being a parent is knowing when to step back, when to give your child the space to learn and grow. I had always been the provider, the protector, the one who stepped in when things went wrong. But now, I had to let Lily stand on her own. And in doing so, I was learning that there's more to fatherhood than just providing. It's about guiding, supporting, and sometimes letting go. Lily hadn't given up, and neither had I. A few weeks after the letter, I received another call. This time, it wasn't a typical check-in or a request for help. It was something else. Something more important. Dad, I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened, and I realize now that I need to start taking responsibility for my life in every way. Not just paying you back for the wedding, but in every aspect of my life. I could hear the sincerity in her voice, and it struck me. This wasn't just another apology. This was a turning point for her. She was ready to take full responsibility for her actions, and more importantly, for the life she was going to build moving forward. I've applied for a job in a marketing firm. It's not much, but it's a start, and I want to tell you that I'm serious about making something of myself. I know it's not going to be easy, but I'm ready to face whatever comes. I'm done relying on anyone else to fix things for me. I sat in silence for a moment, processing her words. For so long, I had been waiting for this moment, waiting for her to understand that the world didn't owe her anything, that the hard work, the sacrifices, the love I had given her, none of it was a free pass. It was a gift. Yes, but a gift that came with responsibility. And now, she was stepping into that responsibility. That's good. Lily, I said, my voice steady, but with a hint of pride that I couldn't quite suppress. I'm proud of you. But remember, it's not just about getting a job or making money. It's about learning to value yourself, your work, and the people who've supported you. You've got a long way to go. But this is the first step. I know, she said, sounding a little unsure. But I'm ready. I know I've made mistakes, and I can't undo the past. But I can make sure my future is different. We talked a little longer about her plans, about the job she had applied for, and what she wanted to do next. I could tell she was nervous, but also excited. She didn't know what the future held. But for the first time in a long while, I saw someone who was willing to fight for it. After we hung up, I sat there for a moment, thinking about everything Lily had just said. It wasn't perfect. She wasn't perfect, but she was trying. And that, in itself, that was a step toward healing not just for her, but for me as well. A few weeks later, I received another surprise. Lily called again. But this time, she wasn't talking about work or her personal growth. She had a different kind of news to share. Something I wasn't expecting, but something that felt like another milestone in our relationship. Dad, I did it, she said, her voice full of excitement. I got the marketing job. They called me back. And they're offering me a position. It's part-time at first, but they said it has the potential to turn into something full-time. My heart swelled with pride as I listened to her. She had done it. She had taken that leap of faith, faced her fears, and pushed herself outside of her comfort zone. And she had succeeded. That's great. Lily, I said, trying to sound calm, but I couldn't hide the pride in my voice. I knew you could do it. I'm proud of you. I really didn't think I could, but you were right. Dad, this whole time, I've been thinking that everything should just be handed to me. But now I know that it's up to me. I have to make it happen for myself. Her words hit me hard. She was finally getting it. She was understanding the lesson I had been trying to teach her all along. That life wasn't just about receiving it, was about giving. Giving of your time, your effort, your love, and your energy. And in return, you earned the respect and the satisfaction of knowing that you had done it on your own terms. It wasn't just about getting a job, or even about paying me back for the wedding. It was about her reclaiming control of her life, her future. And as I sat there, thinking about everything that had transpired, I realized something important. This wasn't just my journey, it was hers, too. The next few months were a blur of change. Lily settled into her new job, gradually moving from part-time to full-time work. She continued to impress me with her drive and determination. She was learning to navigate the challenges of adulthood on her own, without leaning on anyone else to fix her problems. And while there were still bumps along the way, moments of doubt, moments of frustration, there was also a sense of purpose, a sense of direction that I hadn't seen in her before. And, slowly but surely, our relationship began to heal. It wasn't an overnight transformation, but it was real. We started talking more about everything, not just the big things, but the small things, how her day had gone, what she was learning at work, how she was managing her finances, and, of course, the occasional check-in about how things were going with her job. She wasn't perfect, and neither was I, but we were starting to rebuild what had been broken. Slowly, but surely, we were both learning how to meet each other halfway. I still thought about the wedding, about how it had all fallen apart, about the harsh words Lily had said, but I didn't dwell on it anymore. It was part of the past, and while the past had shaped our relationship, it didn't define it. What mattered now was the present and the future. The future where Lily was finding her way, and where I was learning to let go, to trust her, and to let her stand on her own. As the months passed, we both found our footing again. Our conversations became less strained, more natural. The walls we had built between us started to crumble, brick by brick. There was still a lot of healing to do, but I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. Lily was becoming the person I always knew she could be, someone strong, capable, and self-reliant. I didn't know exactly what the future held for us, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like it was something we could navigate together, and that, in itself, was enough. The months after Lily started her new job passed quickly, faster than I would have liked. Life, as it often does, rushed forward, bringing with it both growth and challenges. For me, those months were a period of reflection and quiet hope. Watching my daughter begin to rebuild her life, watching her slowly grow into the person I knew she could be. There were times when I doubted if she would truly change. After everything that had happened, the wedding, the rejection, the decisions I had made, there was a part of me that wondered if she would ever fully understand what I had sacrificed for her. But with each passing day, I saw her becoming more self-sufficient, more responsible, and more aware of the world around her. She was no longer the entitled young woman who thought the world owed her everything. She was becoming someone who understood that success, both in life and in relationships, requires effort, honesty, and hard work. But while I could see the changes in her, I realized something that I hadn't fully acknowledged before. I still had work to do too. I had made my peace with the fact that Lily was learning her lessons, but there was still something left unresolved between us, something I needed to face if we were ever going to move forward fully. It wasn't just about her earning her independence or me letting go of my role as her provider. It was about forgiveness, both giving and receiving. One evening, several months after she had started her new job, Lily called me. Her voice was more confident than it had been before, but there was still a hint of uncertainty in her tone. I could tell that she was nervous about something. "Dad," she began, "I've been thinking about what you said when I first got that job, about how I needed to prove myself, not just to you, but to myself, and I think I'm starting to get it. But there's still something I need to do, something I owe you." I sat back in my chair, listening carefully. "What do you mean?" "Lily, I don't think I ever really understood how much you sacrificed for me. Not just financially, but emotionally, all those years. You worked so hard to give me everything, and I just took it all for granted. I was selfish, and I didn't appreciate what you did for me. I'm sorry." "Dad," the words hung in the air for a moment, and I felt something shift within me. For so long, I had waited for this moment, the moment when Lily would understand the full weight of my sacrifices. But hearing her say it out loud, hearing the sincerity in her voice, was different. It wasn't just an apology. It was a recognition of everything that had led up to this point. A recognition that we had both made mistakes, and that we both had a long road ahead of us. I appreciate you saying that. Lily, I said, my voice softening. But I think there's more to it than just an apology. This isn't just about what I did for you, or about the wedding, or the money. It's about the way we've been treating each other, and the way we've let things slip through the cracks. I know, she replied, her voice steady. I think I've been avoiding that. Avoiding the fact that I hurt you. But I can't do that anymore. I need to make things right with you. I don't expect things to go back to the way they were overnight. I know it's going to take time. But I'm willing to put in the work. For both of us. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I had known that we were in the process of rebuilding, but I hadn't fully realized how much it would take from both of us to truly heal. I had been so focused on Lily's growth, on her ability to become independent, that I hadn't fully addressed my own feelings. I had kept my distance emotionally, unsure of how to let go of the anger, the disappointment, the hurt that had built up over the years. But hearing her speak like this, hearing her acknowledge the pain she had caused, stirred something in me. It reminded me that forgiveness wasn't just for her, it was for me, too. I had spent so much time holding on to my own resentment, my own sense of betrayal, that I hadn't given myself the chance to truly forgive. And if I didn't forgive her, how could I expect her to forgive herself? I know you've been through a lot. Lily, I said, my voice keyed, and I've been hard on you, but I also know that I've held on to things for too long. I've let my hurt and my disappointment cloud the way I see you, and I've realized that I need to let go of that. I need to forgive you, and I need to forgive myself for the way I've been holding on to the past. There was silence on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I wasn't sure if she had heard me. But then she spoke, her voice full of emotion. Dad, that means more to me than I can say. I don't know how to make up for everything I've done, but I'll spend the rest of my life trying. And I'm so grateful that you're willing to forgive me. I'm not perfect. Lily, I said, my voice cracking a little, and I don't expect you to be either. But I'm proud of the person you're becoming. And I'm proud of the fact that you're willing to work on yourself. That's all I can ask for. We spent the next hour talking, not about the past, but about the future, about her job, about the changes she was making, about the lessons she had learned, and about the lessons I had learned too. For the first time in a long time, our conversation wasn't filled with tension or unspoken hurt. It was filled with hope, hope that we could both move forward, hope that we could rebuild what had been broken, and hope that, in time, we could create something stronger than what had been there before. In the weeks that followed, I saw even more change in Lily. She was thriving at her job, taking on more responsibility, and really starting to feel like she was on her way to building a future for herself. It wasn't easy, but she was determined. She was proving, not just to me, but to herself, that she could handle whatever life threw at her. And as for me, I found myself learning to let go in ways I hadn't anticipated. I had always seen my role as a father as someone who provided and protected, but I was starting to realize that part of my job was also to step back and let her grow, even when it was painful. To let go of the past and allow both of us the space to move forward. There were moments of doubt, of course. There were days when I wondered if the progress we were making was real, or if we were just going through the motions. But every time I heard from Lily, every time she shared her successes with me, I knew we were on the right path. Forgiveness wasn't an easy road to walk, but it was the only road that would lead us both to a place of peace. And as much as I had once believed that forgiveness was something Lily needed to give me, I now understood that it was something we both needed to give each other, not just in words, but in actions, in how we showed up for each other every day. The journey of healing, like any journey worth taking, isn't linear. There are moments when it feels like you've made great strides only to be confronted with setbacks that make you question everything. But as I sat in the quiet of my home one evening, reflecting on everything that had led us here, I knew one thing for sure: Lily and I had come a long way. We weren't the same people we were when this all began. Neither of us. It had been almost a year since that fateful wedding day. A year since I had made the decision to stop the payments and pull away from the celebration of what was supposed to be one of the happiest days of Lily's life. A year since I had learned that love, no matter how unconditional, needs to be met with respect and understanding. And while the road to reconciliation had been slow and fraught with challenges, I could see how far she had come. She had embraced the lessons life had thrown at her. She had grown, not just in her career, but in her understanding of the world around her and her place in it. She was no longer the young woman who believed the world owed her something. She had taken responsibility for her actions, and I had watched with a sense of pride as she started making her own way, as she began to build the life she had once taken for granted. But even with all the progress, there was still one thing hanging in the air: the final test. The thing that would truly define whether the healing we had done was real or just a temporary reprieve from the hurt we had both caused each other. And I didn't know when it would come or what it would look like, but I knew it was coming. Life has a way of testing us when we least expect it, when we think we've finally found peace. The test came one afternoon, unexpected and out of nowhere. I had just come home from a long day at work when I saw Lily's number on my phone screen. I hesitated for a moment, wondering what she might need this time. It had been a while since we had talked about anything other than casual updates, and I had grown used to the new dynamic between us, one built on mutual respect, one where we both gave and took with a sense of balance. But this time felt different. "Dad," she said, her voice crackling with a mix of emotion. "I need to talk to you about something." I could hear the tension in her voice, and my heart skipped a beat. "What's going on?" I asked, a sense of dread creeping into my chest. "Is everything okay?" I don't know how to say this," she began, taking a deep breath. "But something's happened at work. I've been offered a promotion. It's a big deal. Dad, they want me to manage the team, take on more responsibility. But there's a catch. I have to move to another city, and I don't know what to do." Her words hit me like a cold splash of water. A promotion, a new city. This was a big deal. I knew how much this job meant to her, how much she had worked to get to this point. But at the same time, I couldn't help but wonder, was she ready for this kind of responsibility? Was she truly ready to take the next step? To leave the familiar and start a new chapter in her life? "I think you're ready," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This promotion, it sounds like a big opportunity for you. You've worked hard for it." "I know," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "But I don't know if I can do it. I've been thinking about it for days now, and I keep going back and forth. I don't know if I'm ready to leave everything behind. I don't know if I'm strong enough to take this on." Her words were a sharp reminder of everything we had been through. A year ago, Lily would have jumped at the chance to move, to get away, to escape the expectations and responsibilities that had started to weigh on her. But now, I could hear the hesitation, the uncertainty in her voice, and I knew that something had changed. Something inside her had shifted. "I think you're stronger than you realize," I said softly. "I've watched you grow over the past year, and I've seen you face challenges head on. This is no different. You have to trust yourself. Lily, this is your moment. It's okay to be scared. But don't let that fear stop you from reaching for something more. You've earned this. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I thought she wasn't going to say anything else. But then, I heard a quiet sob, and my heart broke for her all over again. I'm scared. Dad, she whispered, what if I fail? What if I can't handle it? I don't want to let you down again. I don't want to make the same mistakes. You won't fail, I said firmly. You've already proven to me that you're capable of so much more than you realize. You're not the same person you were a year ago. You're stronger, more confident, and you've learned how to handle life's challenges, and you don't have to do it alone. I'll be here for you, no matter what. I don't want to let you down, she repeated, her voice breaking. I don't want to disappoint you again, Lily, I said gently. You haven't disappointed me, not for a second, and you won't. This is your life, and I believe in you. If you feel this is what you want, then go for it. It's your time. She was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was steadier, more resolute. I'm going to do it. Dad, I'm going to take the job. I know it won't be easy, but I'm ready. I want to prove to myself that I can do this. I know you will, I said, feeling a sense of pride swell inside me. You're not the same person you were. You're capable. Lily, you're more than capable. The next few months were a whirlwind of change. Lily packed up her life and moved to the new city, her new job awaiting her. It wasn't easy for either of us. She was stepping into a new chapter of her life, one that was filled with uncertainty and new challenges. But she was doing it with courage, with determination, and with a sense of purpose that I hadn't seen in her before. As she settled into her new life, we kept in touch regularly. Her calls became more frequent as she navigated the ups and downs of her new role. There were times when she doubted herself, when she felt overwhelmed by the responsibilities that came with the job, but there were also moments of triumph, moments when she felt like she had truly found her footing. And with each of those moments, I saw her confidence grow. It was a strange feeling, watching my daughter begin to build her life on her own, knowing that I had played a part in shaping who she was today. But I also knew that she had done the hard work herself. She had faced the challenges, she had taken the risks, and she had come out stronger on the other side. And then, one evening, I received a call from her. Her voice was full of excitement, but also a little hesitant. Dad, I got promoted, she said, her voice breaking with emotion. They offered me a full-time position. I'm officially a manager. I could hear the pride in her voice. And I knew in that moment that all the fear, all the uncertainty, had been worth it. She had done it. She had proven to herself and to me that she was capable of so much more than I had ever imagined. That's amazing. Lily, I said, my voice full of pride. I knew you could do it. I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you. Dad, she said quietly, you've always believed in me. Even when I didn't believe in myself. I owe so much of this to you. No, I replied, feeling a lump form in my throat. You did it yourself. I just gave you the tools. You built this life. Lily, you built it all on your own. As we talked, I realized that this moment, this milestone in her life, was the final test. Not just for Lily, but for me too. It was the test of forgiveness, of letting go, of trusting that she could handle the challenges that lay ahead, and watching her succeed, watching her take charge of her future. I knew that I had made the right decision all those months ago. The tough love, the hard choices it had, all led to this. Lily was no longer the young woman who took everything for granted. She was someone strong, capable, and independent, someone who had learned the value of hard work, sacrifice, and, most importantly, self-belief. I realized that this was the real reward, not the job, not the promotion, but the knowledge that Lily had found her own path. She had faced the ultimate test, and she had passed with flying colors. And in doing so, she had given me the gift of seeing her grow into the person I always knew she could be. The days following Lily's promotion passed with a sense of quiet satisfaction that I hadn't expected, watching her stand tall in her new role, seeing the pride in her eyes each time she called to share an accomplishment, was something I had longed for. I never expected it to feel this good, this deep sense of fulfillment that came from seeing my daughter finally take control of her life. And yet, there was something else underneath it all, a feeling I hadn't anticipated, something unsettled within me, like a small but persistent crack in the foundation of my thoughts. I realized that as much as I had focused on helping Lily rebuild her life, I had neglected one crucial thing myself. For years, my life had revolved around her, my decision, my sacrifices. My emotions, all of them, had been shaped by my desire to ensure Lily's happiness and success. And in the process, I had forgotten something vital. I had neglected to rebuild my own life, my own sense of purpose, beyond just being her father. I had always taken pride in being a good father. In fact, it was the one identity I had clung to for so long. But now that Lily was starting her own journey, and I was no longer the person she relied on for everything, I found myself at a crossroads. What was I supposed to do now? The realization hit me gradually, like a gentle wave that slowly deepened. For the first time in years, I had to think about myself, not just as Lily's father, but as Tom, a man who had spent his life giving, but who had never stopped to think about what he wanted for his own future. I couldn't deny it. I was proud of everything I had done for Lily, watching her grow, taking on the challenges of her new role, was the best reward I could have asked for. But the truth was, I had never allowed myself the space to think about what I wanted in life. I had buried myself in work, in family responsibilities, in the role of the provider. And now that Lily was starting to spread her wings, I realized I had to start thinking about the future. My future? It wasn't an easy thought to accept. For years, my life had been about creating the best possible future for her, ensuring she would be independent and successful. Now, I had to figure out how to create that same sense of independence for myself. What did I want? What was important to me? Now that the dust was settling from all the years of sacrifice and hard work, the first step, I realized, was to reconnect with the things I had let go of, things I had pushed aside for too long in favor of being there for Lily. I had once loved playing guitar. I had always enjoyed fishing in the quiet mornings before the world had started buzzing. But somehow, those things had fallen away as my life became focused on providing and making sure Lily's every need was met. And so, one evening, after another long day at the construction site, I made a decision. I would pick up the guitar again. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was something for me. I dusted off the old guitar, which had been tucked away in the corner of my closet for years, and I strummed a few chords. They were rusty at first, clumsy even, but it felt good. For the first time in a long time, it felt like I was doing something for myself, something that brought me peace. It wasn't about making a career out of it or impressing anyone with my talent. It was about reconnecting with the person I used to be, the part of me that wasn't just a father, a worker, or a provider. I was reminded of how music had always been a part of me, to a way to escape and find solace, and in that quiet moment, playing the strings. I realized something important. I didn't have to completely reinvent myself, but I did need to start taking small steps to re-engage with my own happiness. Over the next few weeks, I found myself looking at my life through a different lens. I began to appreciate the small things, things I had once overlooked because I was so focused on what others needed. I started making time for the things I enjoyed. Again, playing guitar, taking long walks in the evenings, even picking up a book to read at night instead of just zoning out in front of the TV. It wasn't easy. And there were days when the weight of responsibility still felt overwhelming. But I knew that this was the first real step in rediscovering who I was outside of my role as Lily's father. But there was more to it than just finding hobbies again. I realized that I needed to reconnect with my community. For years, I had kept to myself, focusing on work and family, but I had lost touch with the people who mattered, the friends I had once shared laughs with, the neighbors who had been there for me when things got tough. I decided to make an effort to rebuild those connections, to surround myself with the kind of relationships that made me feel like I was part of something bigger than just my own little world. I started by calling up an old friend, Dave, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. He and I had worked together on several projects when I was younger, and we had always shared a passion for building and creating. We hadn't lost touch completely, but we hadn't made an effort to stay close either. I called him one evening and suggested we grab a drink at the local bar. "Tom," he said when he picked up the phone, "it's been a long time. I was just thinking about you the other day. You up for a drink?" It was a small thing, but it meant a lot to me. We met up later that week, and just like that, we fell back into the easy rhythm of old friends. We talked about our lives, our families, and the old days when we were starting out in the business. For a few hours, I wasn't just Tom, the father, the provider, the guy who worked hard every day. I was just Tom, the guy who had once shared dreams and laughed with someone who understood him. It felt like a breath of fresh air. That evening with Dave was a reminder that life wasn't just about the future, it was also about the present, about the people who shared it with you. And I realized that as much as I had been focused on Lily's future, I needed to focus on the present. I needed to cultivate the relationships that brought me joy, and I needed to make time for the things that made me feel fulfilled. But even as I began to take these small steps toward rebuilding my own life, I couldn't ignore the one thing that still loomed between Lily and me, the conversation we needed to have. Despite all the progress we had made, there was still a sense of unfinished business between us. We had both changed in significant ways, but we had never fully acknowledged the impact our past had on our present relationship. I realized that in order for us to truly move forward, we needed to have one last, honest conversation. A conversation about forgiveness, about healing, and about the future. I called Lily one evening, just as the sun was setting. The phone rang a few times before she answered. "Hey, Dad," she said, her voice warm. "What's up?" "I've been thinking," I said, my voice steady but full of emotion. "And I think it's time we talked. Not just about the job or the wedding, but about everything that's happened between us. I think it's time we really talk about what we've been through and what's next for both of us." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then Lily spoke. Her voice keyed now. "I've been thinking about that too. Dad, I think it's time." We talked for hours that night, more openly and honestly than we ever had before. We talked about the mistakes, the regrets, and the lessons we had learned. We acknowledged the hurt, but we also celebrated the growth, both of us, and as we spoke, I realized that this conversation, this final piece of the puzzle, was exactly what we needed to truly move forward. It wasn't an easy road. The healing process, the rebuilding, and the forgiveness, it all took time. But as I sat with Lily that night, listening to her talk about her dreams for the future, I knew that we were finally on the same page. She was no longer the young woman who took everything for granted, and I was no longer the man who defined himself solely through his role as a father. Together, we had built something new, a new understanding, a new relationship. And with that, I knew we were both ready for the next chapter. A chapter where Lily was standing on her own 2 feet, and I was learning to live my life for myself. 2. The weeks that followed our conversation were a testament to the progress we had made. Lily and I were no longer two strangers forced into a strained relationship by circumstance. Instead, we had become two people who, while not perfect, had found a way to reconcile the past and build something new. As much as I had tried to let go, there were still moments when the echoes of old mistakes would resurface. But with each passing day, I felt the walls between us continue to break down. Lily was thriving in her new role. The promotion she had earned was a reflection of her hard work, her newfound sense of responsibility, and the resilience that had started to define her. She was confident, assertive, and making strides in her personal life. She had taken to her new city with the same determination she had applied to everything else in her life. But I could tell that the shift wasn't just professional, it was personal. She was beginning to understand the importance of balancing independence with connection, and the importance of building a life that was truly her own. For me, the changes were subtler, but no less significant. I was finding new ways to engage with the world, ways that didn't solely revolve around work or being a father. I had started to reestablish old friendships, reconnect with hobbies I had long abandoned, and make space for myself in a way I hadn't for years. But there was still one thing lingering in the back of my mind, something that had been there since that day. Lily left for her new city. That final test of our relationship. It had been over a year since she moved, and I hadn't visited her yet. I had promised myself that I wouldn't rush it, that she needed time to settle in, to build her new life. But deep down, I knew that part of me was still holding back. I was proud of everything she had accomplished, and yet, I wasn't sure how to navigate the space between us. The delicate dance of being a father while respecting her independence. It wasn't that I was afraid of her success or the life she was building. It was that I had never imagined it would be so difficult to watch her grow without me. She had made it clear that she was ready for this new chapter. But there was still a part of me that wanted to protect her, to shield her from the mistakes I had made. I wanted to help her avoid the pain, the setbacks, the fear of not measuring up. But more than anything, I wanted to let her know that I was still here, that no matter how much time had passed, I would always be her father. I decided that it was time to go to her, time to step out of the shadows and into her new world. Not as the man who had once controlled everything, but as the father who had come to see her not just as his daughter, but as an individual who had built something meaningful all on her own. The drive was longer than I had anticipated. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. There was a part of me that wondered if things had changed too much, if Lily and I had grown too far apart for things to feel like they once had. The thought of stepping into her life, the life she had built without me, made me nervous. I wasn't sure what to expect. Was I going to be the overbearing father, still trying to control everything? Or was I going to respect her new independence? I spent the entire drive thinking about what I wanted to say. But as I neared her apartment complex, I realized there was no script for this. There was no perfect way to say what needed to be said. It was a moment of reckoning, of truth, of simply showing up and letting whatever came next unfold. When I finally arrived at her apartment, I sat in the car for a few moments, taking in the view. The building was modern, surrounded by green trees and well-kept gardens. It was clear she had made this place her own. There were no signs of the little girl I had raised, no remnants of the messy, carefree childhood she had lived. This was a grown woman's space, a woman who had made her way in the world without asking for anyone's help. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car, walking toward the entrance of the building. As I approached her door, I felt the weight of the moment heavy, yet filled with possibility. I raised my hand to knock, but before I could, the door swung open. "Dad!" Lily's voice cracked as she looked at me. Her face was a mixture of surprise, confusion, and something deeper, something I couldn't quite read. "Lily," I said, my voice soft. "I hope I'm not interrupting." She stepped aside, her eyes wide as she gestured for me to come in. No, not at all. I didn't expect this." "I know," I said, stepping over the threshold. "I didn't expect it either." The silence between us felt awkward at first, but it didn't last long. We both knew that words weren't needed just yet. This wasn't about what we said, it was about showing up, being present, and understanding that the past, while important, he didn't have to dictate the future. Over the next few days, we settled into a rhythm. Lily showed me around her apartment, her new life, and I could see how much pride she took in the space she had created. It was a far cry from the house she had grown up in, and yet there was something familiar about it. I saw pieces of her childhood scattered throughout the space, small mementos, photographs, trinkets that reminded me of the girl I had raised. We spent evenings talking, catching up on everything that had happened since we last spoke in person. She told me about her new job, the people she had met, the challenges she had faced. But there was also something else, something deeper that she shared with me. She talked about the fears she still had, the doubts that crept in when she felt overwhelmed. She wasn't the perfect, self-assured woman I had always imagined her to be. She was still finding her way, still trying to figure out how to balance her ambitions with the weight of the past. "I don't want to disappoint you," she admitted one evening, her voice quieter than usual. "You never have," I said, turning to look at her. "You never will. I'm proud of you." "Lily, more than you know. I still feel like I'm not doing enough," she confessed, "like I'm always 2 steps behind, like I'm just pretending to be an adult." I smiled softly, walking over to her. "Trust me, that feeling doesn't go away. It's part of the journey. You'll always feel like you're playing catch-up. But the truth is, you're doing great. You're exactly where you're supposed to be." She met my gaze, her eyes searching mine as if looking for reassurance. And in that moment, I realized that this connection, this understanding was what we had been working toward all along. It wasn't about her proving herself to me, or me holding her to impossible standards. It was about us, as father and daughter, simply being there for each other. The next morning, I woke early and took a walk around the neighborhood. It was quieter than I remembered, peaceful. Almost, I found myself reflecting on everything that had brought me here, to this moment. A year ago, I would never have imagined that we would be sitting together in her apartment, talking about the future. But now, it felt like the natural next step. We had both come a long way. When I returned, Lily was sitting at the kitchen table, her phone open in front of her. "I think I want to move forward with the promotion," she said, looking up at me, I've been thinking about it a lot, and I think it's time. I'm ready. I smiled, feeling a surge of pride. I'm proud of you. Lily, I knew you were ready. She smiled back, but there was something else in her eyes. A sense of clarity, a sense of confidence that hadn't been there before. I knew this wasn't just about the job. It was about her taking control of her life, of her future, in a way that was uniquely hers. As we sat together, sharing a quiet breakfast, I realized that this moment, this chapter in our lives, wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning of something new, a new relationship between us, based not on expectations or fear, but on mutual respect, understanding, and love. It had been a few months since I visited Lily in her new city. The trip had been everything I'd hoped for, and more. Our time together had been more than just a reunion. It had been a chance to reforge the bond between us, to fully embrace the changes we had both gone through. I left her apartment feeling a sense of peace that I hadn't expected, a peace that came from knowing she was okay, that she was not only capable of standing on her own, but thriving. And, equally important, I was starting to understand what it meant to be her father without trying to control her life, without overshadowing her growth. But as much as we had come to a new understanding, there was one thing I had yet to fully come to terms with: my own role in her future. It wasn't about being a safety net for her anymore. It wasn't about ensuring her success. It was about being present for the moments that truly mattered. Being her father, without letting my own needs and expectations cloud our relationship. I had spent my entire life shaping my identity around being the provider, the protector, the father who did everything he could to make sure his daughter had the best. But I was beginning to understand that this identity, while important, was only part of who I was. The other part, the part that had been buried for so long, was the part of me that still needed growth, still needed healing. A part that had been so focused on Lily's future that I had forgotten to focus on my own. As much as I had encouraged Lily to embrace her independence, I realized that I too had to embrace mine. I needed to figure out what I wanted for myself, to move beyond the role of father and into the role of a man who was not defined by his relationship with his daughter, but by his own dreams, aspirations, and desires. The transition wasn't easy, but it started with small steps. After returning from the visit to Lily's, I found myself standing at a crossroads in my life. The construction company I had built from the ground up was doing well, but it no longer held the same grip on me that it once did. For the first time in years, I was considering the possibility of stepping back, of giving others a chance to take the reins. Maybe it was time to pass on the baton, to enjoy the fruits of the labor I had put into building something successful, and to explore new horizons. I found myself looking at old photos, memories of a younger version of myself before the burdens of fatherhood and responsibility had weighed me down. I thought about the things I had once loved doing: hiking in the mountains, writing, playing music, things I had put on hold in favor of work and family. But now, with Lily standing strong on her own, I realized it was my turn to rediscover the things that once brought me joy. One evening, I sat down at my desk and made a list, not of tasks or obligations, but of things I wanted to explore, things that had been dormant for too long: traveling, writing, music. I didn't know where to start, but I knew that something had to change. I couldn't keep living for others and forgetting myself in the process. And so, I made a decision to start small. I enrolled in a local writing workshop, something I had always wanted to do but never made the time for. I dusted off my guitar and started playing again, just for myself. I even signed up for a hiking trip with some old friends from the neighborhood. It wasn't about making huge, grand gestures. It was about reclaiming the parts of myself that had been buried for so long. A few months later, I found myself sitting on a park bench, looking out at a breathtaking view of the mountains. I had spent the day hiking, just as I had always dreamed of doing. The air was crisp, and the sky was a deep blue. I felt a sense of contentment that I hadn't known in years. My body was tired, but my soul felt alive. I hadn't realized how much I had missed this feeling, this connection to nature, to my own spirit. I thought about Lily and how far she had come, how far we had both come. She had taken the leap into her own life, finding her independence, her career, her happiness. And in many ways, I had done the same. I had found the courage to step back, to let go, and to embrace my own life again. We had both grown, not just as father and daughter, but as individuals with our own paths to follow. And it wasn't just about independence. It was about balance, about finding a way to be there for each other without losing ourselves in the process. I had spent so many years focused solely on her needs, on her success, that I had forgotten that my own happiness mattered too. But now, I was learning that it wasn't about choosing one or the other. It was about living a life where both were possible, where both could coexist in harmony. I returned home that evening feeling more content than I had in years. I picked up the phone and called Lily. "Hey, Dad," she answered, her voice warm and familiar. "Hey, Lily, just wanted to check in. How's everything going?" "I'm good." "Dad, work's been busy, but I'm adjusting. Actually, I was thinking about coming to visit soon. There's something I wanted to talk to you about." I could hear the excitement in her voice, but also a hint of uncertainty. "What's on your mind?" "Well," she hesitated, "I've been thinking about the future, about where I want to go from here. And I realized something. I'm really happy with where I am, but I also feel like there's more for me to do. And I guess, in a way, I'm just asking for your blessing. For the next step, I know I've been on my own for a while, but I still want you to be part of the process. I still want you to be a part of my life." "Dad," her words hit me harder than I expected. I had been so focused on my own journey, on the need to let go, that I hadn't fully realized that Lily needed to hear that she still had a place in my life too. That I wasn't just giving her the space to grow, but I was also giving myself the space to be there for her in a new way. Not as someone who fixes things, but as someone who supports her choices, who cheers her on from the sidelines, who encourages her to keep growing just as I was growing. "I'm proud of you, Lily," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You don't need my blessing. You've already proven that you're capable of everything you set your mind to. But I want you to know that I'll always be here. No matter what your next step is, I'm with you." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and then she spoke, her voice soft. "Thanks, Dad. That means more to me than you know." Looking back at everything that had transpired the wedding, the struggles, the moments of doubt, and the long road to reconciliation, I realized something important. The real lesson wasn't about the sacrifices we make for each other. It was about the freedom that comes with letting go, the freedom to be who we truly are, and the space we create for one another to grow. As I sat on the porch that evening, watching the sun set behind the mountains, I realized that the love between Lily and me had come full circle. It was no longer about dependence. It was about mutual respect, understanding, and the recognition that we were both living our own journeys with each other's support. The lesson, for both of us, was clear. Life is about growth, not just for the young, but for the old as well. We are all on our own path, And sometimes we have to let go of what we thought we knew in order to move forward. The journey of healing and growth is never easy. It's full of twists and turns, of setbacks and challenges. But the most important lesson is that life is about balance. It's about finding the space to grow, to make mistakes, to forgive, and to start again. And while our relationships may be tested, it's through these tests that we learn the most about who we are and who we want to become. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. It's about embracing the freedom to be who you are, while also supporting those around you to be who they need to be. Life is about growth always. For Lily and me, the journey was just beginning. What about you? What's your journey of growth been like? How have you navigated the difficult moments in your relationships? And what lessons have you learned along the way? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. Share your story with me in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and share it with someone who might need to hear it too. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so we can continue this journey together. Let's grow and learn from each other's experiences. Looking forward to hearing from you all. Take care.